As my descendant from the future, Count Giuseppe Krampus once said, you don't find great movie experiences find you. Just roll with it, because that's definitely the steez in the case of this gem I'm about to drop on y'all right now. I just got done watching a reasonably crappy movie and was heading into another one before the spirit told me to cut that shit short and find something else. I eventually settled on this little known indie horror flick that I had never even heard of. Quick glance at the blurb, I see it's got my mans, the legend Tony Todd in it, and a fairly interesting, if not wacky, plot. I'm like super high by now, so I'm like, fuck it, let's see what it's about. Man, I had no idea what the fuck I was in store for. Now that my excitement has subsided and I'm mostly sober, I should be able to compose a somewhat competent review from my manic notes. Let's see how it all works out. We open up with an introduction to our big bad villain, Shadow, who's giving mad Uncle Pee-wee vibes while being escorted to his execution. This is a bad, bad man. He's not only a rapist and a murderer, he's the worst kind of witch doctor, the kind with contingency plans. Dude is so adept in the dark arts that when they do put him down with the lethal injection, the energy from his death throws the whole prison into mass chaos. Prisoners erupt into a murderous riot and lay waste to most of the CEO staff on deck. Right off the rip, we see how crazy this movie is through a series of quick but gory murder scenes. 20 years later, we find ourselves at a women's prison where the new arrival, Solitaire, has just been sent to serve out her sentence. She's a physically imposing woman, so naturally she gets mean mugged by the resident badasses. Now, when I say physically imposing, I mean this bitch looks like Bobby Lashley with the Mac Tonight chin and everything. She's also oddly hot in her prison skimpies, which felt kind of weird, but whatevs. Anyway, we get to a shower scene, and man, it's Pog heaven in here. It's like indie Hollywood suddenly realized that white women with ass were in and rounded up all the stock bitches they could find in one scene. It's very impressive to say the least. Meanwhile, we get an extended shot of the jailhouse bully, Mondo. This bitch is huge, like the love child of Tony Todd and Tommy Lister. Guess she's a former bodybuilder, but has these ridiculous tits. This came out in like 2006, so I know she had to receive at least one call from the WWE about a tryout. I imagine Vince would have loved to get his hands on this kind of specimen. Anyway, Solitaire playing Captain Saverho ends up in a squabble with Mondo and her hench bitches in a very entertaining shower brawl. Actually, the first quarter of this movie plays out like an action/martial arts flick. The shower brawl is quickly followed up by an even more insane battle royal in the yard. Despite just minding her own business, Solitaire ends up in solitary, and this is where the horror elements start to come back into play. In solitary, she starts having these horrific visions of the aforementioned Batman, hinting that this forsaken grounds is not only the site of the brutal prison riot from 20 years ago, but Solitaire has some sort of connection to Mr. Witch Doctor. We finally go full-on horror when the blood of a wounded inmate seeps into the infamous on-campus burial ground, and the evil prison doctor who's been working his nefarious machinations in the background sees one of his experiments go horribly wrong, and we're off and running. This is easily the most fun I've had watching a horror movie since Trophy Heads, which I also discovered on Tubi. It's got everything. Full-frontal nudity, bitches doing karate, hot lesbians, butchy dykes, zombies, a murderous deformed infant, and some of the most epic instances of gore you'll ever see in any horror flick. There's this one scene toward the end, sort of like a reenactment of the prison riot from 20 years ago. Total fucking chaos. The few survivors finally get separation from the zombie mob, but the one bitch is uneasy about her homegirls being picked off. She's gotta make a stance. Now I'm paraphrasing, but she's all like, "We can't just stand here." Then the butchy warden is like, "Nah, bitch, it's too dangerous." Of course, she bolts out there to make the save anyway and promptly gets fucked up. But she's determined so much that she stuffs her guts back in the wound to save the other bitch trapped in one of the cells, drags her to safety, and finally dies from her mortal injuries. I was like, hell no, this shit is too wild. So yeah, man, Shadow, Dead Riot, it's not some award-worthy masterpiece, but as far as horror movies go, this shit was top-notch. With the exception of Mondo, who was a little wooden with her dialogue and whatnot. Most of the actors nailed it with solid performances across the board. I highly recommend checking this shit out in your spare. And if you do, make sure it's the uncut version. Peace.